Buongiorno. My name is Angela, and this is my kitchen. It's good to have you with us today. We're going to prepare ragu sauce today, which is a meat sauce. Now, since it lends itself so beautifully to freezing, why not prepare 2 or 3 recipes while you are preparing your meat sauce and freeze what you don't use? What I usually do is place the excess ragu in pint jars, and then when I need them, simply take them out of my freezer and defrost them, and I will be able to prepare 2 or 3 dishes very, very easily, which is what we're going to do today. Today we're going to prepare ziti with ragu. Ziti is a heavy, thick tubular macaroni. We're also going to prepare lasagna. We're also going to be making homemade manicotti. Now that sounds like quite an undertaking, doesn't it? But it's really quite simple. Now for our basic ragu sauce, we will need 3 tablespoons of olive oil, 1 medium onion chopped, 1 rib of celery chopped, 1 sized carrot chopped, and 1 clove of garlic crushed. We will also need the large can of Italian plum tomatoes. This one weighs about 2 pounds 3 ounces, which is enough for 1 recipe for the 1 pound of pasta which we will be making. We will also be using parsley. Have it here fresh, but you also use the dried parsley. However, if you are using fresh parsley, we would use about 1 tablespoon. If you are using dried parsley, you would use only 1 teaspoon. The same with our basil. I have some fresh basil here from my garden, which I froze. The color is darkened, but the flavor is just as sweet as if it were just picked from the garden. Again, if you prefer, if you don't have fresh basil, you can use your dried basil. You can use your dried basil, which is excellent, just as good. And again, only 1 teaspoon to about 1 tablespoon of fresh basil. One little hint. If you are using fresh parsley and fresh basil, add these at the end of your cooking. However, if you are using the dry parsley and basil, I would add these at the time that you add your tomato sauce to give them a chance to reconstitute themselves and lend the flavor that it will need, and it will taste just as good as fresh. In order to make our ragu sauce, we're going to be using a shallow pan. This is the kind I like because there's iron inside and the porcelain outside, and it's a cleaner pan to work with. Also, the utensils that we use are always wooden utensils when we are stirring. The reason for that being that if we're using aluminum utensils, the metal on metal will lend a taste to the ragu. This is the 3 tablespoons of olive oil that I'll be adding to the pan. And my heat will be raised to medium-high. And as soon as that oil becomes aromatic or starts dancing slightly in the pan, we'll know that the oil is warm enough to receive the vegetables that we have prepared. Okay, the oil is aromatic now and it's beginning to dance in the pan. So now we'll add our onions. Our celery. Our carrots. And we'll stir this around until the vegetables here become glazed, at which time we'll add our tomatoes. All right, let's have it work by itself for a little bit. Today we're going to use the blender to strain our tomatoes, which is a very, very quick process. However, if you have one of the strainers such as this, you might also use this if you prefer. However, one is just as good as the other. This is much quicker. All of the juices included, as well as the plum tomato. And that's it. It's done. Our vegetables have become glazed. We're going to add our tomato. And it'll be coming to a boil in just a few seconds. What we might do is put it on high until it comes to a boil and then lower the heat. At this time, we're going to add the garlic. Now, as I mentioned before, if you're using dry parsley and dry basil, add your 1 teaspoon of parsley and 1 teaspoon of basil at this particular time. Now, I don't use much salt in my sauce. However, of course, I always say salt to taste. When I do use salt, I add it at the end of the cooking process, and I start with a very small amount so that anyone can adjust the taste upward. Don't over salt. And of course, a few little turns on your pepper mill also enhances the flavor of your ragu. One misconception is that ragu must be cooked for 3, 4, 5 hours all day. Not so. 1 hour and a half, and I'm going to time it on my stove, is sufficient for ragu sauce. What happens when you are continually cooking your tomato? It becomes very acrid. And of course, people add sugar. Again, don't do that. The reason for the carrot here is to lend its sweetness to the sauce. The only thing that will change the acidity of the tomato is bicarbonate of soda, believe it or not. Sugar has absolutely no bearing on the changing of the structure of the acidity. Let's check to see what our ragu is doing. Well, it's simmering nicely, and we have it at medium-high. You stir it occasionally, making sure that it is simmering softly and not boiling too rapidly. We don't want to decrease the amount of ragu to a point where it's much, much too thick. All right, now we're going to make our meat balls. In order to have a ragu, we do need meat, don't we? Now, one of the things I like to do is to combine pork and beef. This is 1/2 pound of fresh pork ground. If the supermarket or your butcher does not have it, you can purchase a boneless Boston butt and have them grind it for you, and then you can use just 1/2 of it for each recipe. This is extra lean ground beef, and we will mix those together. But before we do that, I have here 1 cup of freshly grated breadcrumbs, which incidentally I do in my freezer. Now you can use Italian bread, French bread, or even sliced bread if you like, but I like to use the Italian bread. What I do is put 4 slices in, 4 slices of Italian bread in my blender, and about this size. And we get exactly a cup. Now, don't worry. If it's a cup and a half, that's all right. Don't worry about the exact measurements. This is one of the things that I want you to relax about, is that if it's a little over or a little under, it does not matter. What I am going to do, I have milk here only because if you are using the dry breadcrumbs, you will add 1/2 cup of milk to reconstitute the bread. You wait about 10 minutes for the milk to be absorbed in the breadcrumbs, and then squeeze out every bit of milk that you can and discard it. I do not use milk in my freshly grated breadcrumbs. So we're going to set this aside since this is fresh bread. Put it into a large bowl. Then we will add our pork, 1/2 pound of pork, and beef, and this is where your hands come into play, and mix. And this is fun. It's just like making mud pies. And mix it well. Remember, this is freshly grated breadcrumbs, so I have not added milk. Then I will add 1 egg at a time. And I'm using 3 eggs. Time for another egg. So it's 1 cup of breadcrumbs to 3 eggs to 1 pound of meat. Can you see through the glass bowl? You will. I'll hold it up so that you can see it better. You see, you don't see the egg. It's in the meat. Your third egg. Get these out of our way. And I'm doing the same thing here. Keep turning. I will now add my half cup of Romano cheese. This is going to absorb some of the egg too, as did the breadcrumbs. I smell the sauce. It smells good. One tablespoon of fresh parsley. It's looking good. 1 clove of garlic. This has been chopped. You can either crush or chop your garlic. And let's mix this nicely. Now, it's up to you whether you want to add salt or not. Bearing in mind that Romano cheese is salty, so you might not want to add any salt if you are watching your salt intake. You can always add salt later on. All right. You see? It's all come together nicely now. You don't see any egg. It's all been mixed beautifully. What we do now is make little balls, or little meatballs. Okay, I take a pinch of my meatball mixture and roll it around and make a ball about the size of, what would you say, a large golf ball, a small tennis ball, about that size. Now you'll find that after you've rolled 1 or 2 meatballs, your hands begin to stick. Well, we have a solution for that. Put your hand in a little bit of water and it won't stick. All right, now we're going to need a frying pan. I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of olive oil into the frying pan. A shallow pan, as you see here. Add your 3 tablespoons of oil. I'm going to put this on high. And let's wait until the oil becomes aromatic, or you see it kind of moving around in the pan, and you'll know that it's hot enough. Now make sure that the oil is hot, because otherwise your meatballs are going to stick to the pan. For this I like to use a flat spoon so that you can scoop your meatballs properly without having them tear. Okay, the oil is ready now. This added procedure really isn't necessary, but some of them have flattened a little bit. What is nice about a Teflon-lined pan is that the likelihood of sticking is minimized, but a regular heavy aluminum pan will do as well. Now this is going to take maybe 10 or 15 minutes. What we do is keep moving the meatballs around and turning them so that all sides are browned. See that? A nice golden brown there. Keep turning them so that all, and this is why you need room in your pan so that you can flip. And of course those in the center are going to be a little more golden and those on the outer perimeter. So what we do is just switch them around so that they all get evenly browned. Don't brown them too deeply, just a nice golden brown, because they're going to continue cooking in your ragu sauce. Now that the meatball, I'm going to add a tablespoon of red wine. Now what's going on here is that the flavor wine is going to permeate meatballs, but we want really to put in, but we don't want the pan, it would make it. So we're going to let the wine evaporate, and at that time add the ball to the sauce, continue to full-time hour cover, and just cook slow. Right, and it's all evaporated. What now is use meatballs to the sauce. Now ragu, because we have added ragu type. So the hungry and pasta. Pasta is kind of the generic for spaghetti. So when I talk about pasta, I mean myself. Then when you mention it by name, lasagna, your linguine, all of which are. Here we go. Turn this off. Remove the pan. I'm going to rate that come to. Make sure that it's still bumped. Have it not. Now we have say about it's on the going to cover. Low to low. You just watched not this later to see if it's cooking properly. Within time you will have each time you can seasonings. If you salt, if you turn the pepper mill for fresh ground pepper, freshly after you, however you have added your dry parsley and your dry basil, if that is what you're using at the time. Add the to the sauce. The ragu has been cooking for an hour. At this point, we want to remove the lid so that the ragu becomes thicker. And also, at this point, we can add our salt. I'm adding a half a teaspoon of salt only. Okay. And a few turns on the pepper mill. It's 3 turns. Let's turn the meatballs around. Now this is going to cook uncovered for about another half hour. We're not adding the basil and the parsley yet until the very end. You notice that I'm adding my 1 tablespoon of fresh parsley now to the completed sauce and the fresh basil. Give it a turn and let those flavors mingle nicely. And just leave it sit there. Then a couple of turns with pepper mill. Our sauce is just about ready, and we'll just leave that sit there for a while. We're now ready to boil the water for the macaroni that we are going to be making today. We're using an 8-quart pot in which we have placed 6 quarts of water. You notice it's cold water up to the ribs. Now why do we use cold water? Warm water will impart a taste of its own to the pasta. We don't want that. Never use hot water or warm water in your boiling water. When the water boils, we will add our ziti. Now, every manufacturer has his own directions as to how long al dente is. Read your manufacturer's instructions. The lower end, if it says 7 to 12 minutes, the 7 would be your al dente. Now, what does al dente mean? Al dente means that your pasta is still firm and has a little bite to it. In Italy, there's a tradition that says that when the cook took the macaroni out of the pot, the way she could tell whether it was al dente was if she flung it against her tile wall and counted to 3. If the pasta fell to the floor, it was al dente. If it stuck to the wall, it was overcooked and she hung herself. Now, usually on your pasta boxes, they'll say put 2 tablespoons of salt in the boiling water. I'm just going to put 1. You can adjust upwards if you like. The water is now boiling, and we'll put the ziti into the boiling water. Now, since this spaghetti, you can use either the wooden spoon or the wooden fork. With the spaghetti, of course, we always use a wooden fork so that the strands do not stick together. Put all of the ziti in there and turn. Make sure that you get down to the bottom of the pot and move upwards. I'm now going to put the lid on so that the water reboils very, very quickly. When that happens, we will remove the lid and let it continue boiling. When it starts reboiling, I'm going to remove the lid and make sure that that boiling water stays at a nice rolling boil. We don't want it to overflow, and the likelihood of that happening is kind of limited here because we have enough space for the water to increase. Now, al dente for this particular ziti is 12 minutes. So what we're going to do is time it for 12 minutes, and when the 12 minutes are up, we will have perfectly cooked ziti. The ziti are ready. We're going to transfer this to a colander, which I have in the sink. Make sure that the colander has kind of base, because otherwise it gets to be pretty tippy. And I wouldn't recommend a sieve, because you've got to hold that with one hand and try to pour with the other, and that's not going to work. Shake your colander to make sure that all of the water is out. I'm going to transfer the ziti now into a warmed platter. Get my ragu. And a ladle. Now what you might do is move the meatballs aside so you can get to about 3 good scoops of sauce. And we're going to mix the ziti. We'll use the rest of the sauce from one recipe's worth for both garnish and for extra sauce that you'll have in a little container on the side for anyone who likes more sauce. Put some sauce for garnish. And I'll save some for those who want more. Now I want you to come to the cheese. You'll notice that the cheeses in the supermarkets are the grated kinds, which are imported. The imported ones are best. However, if you like to grate your own cheese, you can buy those as well. This is Parmigiana cheese, which is a yellow cheese made out of cow's milk, whereas the Romano is made out of sheep's milk. This is a much more subtle flavor, whereas the Pecorino Romano, the Romano cheese, is rather a sharp and robust flavor. It's a matter of taste. I am going to grate some of the fresh cheese right onto the ziti. And there you have a beautiful dish. Now, what you might want to also do is get your meatballs and just place them along the outer rim of your platter. But what Italians do, they use it as another entree with a salad, a plain green salad with oil and vinegar dressing, and it's the meat entree. But some people like to eat them together, so I'm going to do it that way today. But if you want to be really Italian, the meatballs will go in a separate platter after the macaroni are finished. Then the meatballs are served with a nice green salad. And a glass of Chianti, of course, or other red wine. There you are. Doesn't that look pretty? And there's our first recipe completed. The crowning touch is 1 tablespoon of sweet butter. Incidentally, in Italian cooking, only sweet butter is used. This will melt over the top and give delightful flavor. This is ragu sauce that I had frozen. It's now defrosted, and it's just a half or 1 pint or 1 pound. And I'm going to use this for manicotti. Not use very much ragu, and so you don't need a total recipe for that. Now, in order to make my manicotti, which are really crepes, I'm going to use my blender. You can do it by hand, but it's easier with the blender, so why not use it? We'll need 1 cup of all-purpose flour, which we will sift. I sift it right into the blender. It's faster and easier, though you can sift it into a bowl and then transfer it into the blender. Some of it, of course, will fall out, but that's okay. If you turn your little sieve this way, you'll find that it's easier to get into the blender. I'm going to add 1 of it to this also. That's a full cup. And here you see, you'll notice the little balls of flour that you would not have noticed if you had put it in directly. And so this way the flour is beautifully sifted. At this point, I'm going to add my eggs. Now what I like to do is put all of my eggs in at once. What could be easier? And at this point, let's just mix it up a little bit. Add 1 1/2 cups of milk. And stir a little more. What you might do is look to see where the flour is and kind of press it down so that it's not all sitting on the bottom there. And you don't have to be delicate with this 1/4 cup and then another 1/4. You can just put it in all at once if you like. There you go. And here we have 1 tablespoon of oil, which we will also add to the mixture. Put the blender top on, and here we go. Check it to see that it's all been blended nicely, and it seems to have. Let me give it just a few seconds more. There you are. And your crepes are ready to be cooked. Now what we do is, in order to facilitate this, what I do is use 2 8-inch pans. So I'm having 2 of them going at one time. And this will give us about 15 crepes. They have to be very, very thin. And what I do is use the 2 of them so that I'll have them done in no time at all. Okay, in order to make our crepes, we're going to oil the bottom lightly. What I have here is a little cup with olive oil. I'm using 2 pans. Of course, that's not necessary. And these, as I said, are 8-inch pans. Your batter is the consistency of light cream. And about half of this would be 1/4 cup. And that's about as much as you'll need, about 1/4 cup of batter, which you will place in the pan and kind of turn it around so that it has a circular shape. And you help the shape along. Same here. And when the top has set is the time that we turn our crepe. We don't want to have these very, very brown. Just a light golden brown is all you need. Now when you flip it over, you really want to take it off almost immediately, because all you want to do is to set that. I will place the crepes on a plate between sheets of wax paper. Again, oiling the bottom. Placing my batter. Turn this one. This will set in just a moment. And again, as I said, almost immediately you will remove it. Place a sheet of wax paper and your crepe on top of that. Our crepes are ready. Now we're going to prepare the filling. For the filling, we need a pound of milk ricotta. This is going to be a firmer quality than you usually see. If you skim milk, it's more liquid. So it will simply constitute a little bit, which I'll later. However, we just whether it's thick enough or not. This is 1 ricotta. I have 3/4 of a cup of powdered cheese here. I'm only going to use 1/2 a cup, reserving 1/4 a cup to sprinkle on top of the manicotti after they've been placed in the pan. So about 1/2 a cup here. And again, don't worry if it's a little over, a little under. It's not going to bother anything. Okay, that's right. And we stir, mix nicely. And you'll see the gravies will be absorbed in the moisture of the ricotta. I'm now adding 1/4 of a pound of diced mozzarella. Again, whole milk mozzarella. Don't use the skim milk because it tends to be much tougher. It doesn't melt as nicely as the whole milk. Okay, that goes in. Mix. What I'm going to add next is an option. You don't need to put it in. However, it does give it its flavor. I don't know if you've ever heard of prosciutto. Prosciutto is a special kind of ham that comes from Italy that is sliced very, very thin, almost paper thin. And I've put slices of this prosciutto into our filling. It tastes something like Smithfield ham, but it isn't as gummy. And this is about 4 slices of prosciutto sliced. Now you can get those in your delis. Now we're mixing this again. Then we add 1 slightly beaten egg. And let's see what that does to our ricotta. You see there are still kind of lumps there. We don't want it to be creamy, but we want it to be a little less firm. So I think I'm going to add 1/4 of a cup of milk. Whole milk, skim milk, it doesn't matter. If you're trying to save calories in this dish, forget it. Yes, now this is the texture that we want. A pinch of salt. And I really mean a pinch, just a pinch. A couple of turns on your pepper mill, and a tablespoon of fresh parsley, which is right here. And our filling is ready. Now we prepare the pan by taking a pat of butter. This is about a tablespoon of butter. Right here. Paper towel, and coat your pan. There you are. Now we're ready for our manicotti. I'm going to use this acrylic base here, which is clean. Place your manicotti here. And I would say a nice heaping tablespoon of ricotta filling, and spread it. And don't go all the way close to the edges because it'll only come out. So toward the center, and spread it in the center rather evenly with the edges clear. Then we roll it. Roll your manicotti. And the point at which the crepe meets the crepe is the part that will go down. Now you fill your whole pan with manicotti side by side. And what we do is we put the sauce on the manicotti, about a tablespoon of sauce on each manicotti. Manicotti do not require much sauce. And a sprinkling of cheese on top of that. All right, as you remember, our plate, baking dish if you want, has been buttered with 1 tablespoon of butter, and the manicotti have been placed in the baking dish. Now we will put about a tablespoon of Ragu sauce Manicotti do not take much sauce at all. So you would only use a half of your ragu recipe, which would be about a pint or a pound of cooked tomato ragu sauce. Now in our ragu, we have our sausage, which we can cut up into little pieces and garnish the dish. This is the quarter of a cup of cheese that we had left from the original 3/4. We used 1/2 of it in the filling, and we'll sprinkle the cheese over the manicotti. If you were adding sausage, you would also add it at this time. And at a 375 preheated oven, just cook this, bake it for 30 minutes. We rolled all of our crepe, and now we're ready to make our sausage. And if you would come to the stove, we're using a shallow pan, and we're going to be adding about 4 tablespoons of water to the pan. And we have the pan on high. Once the water starts boiling, we're going to add our link sausage. Now, in an Italian grocery store or meat market, you will find your links tied with a string. However, in your supermarkets, you will find them in larger links, and they're just as good. This is sweet sausage. You might decide that you like the more spicy or the hot sausage. I'm removing the string, and you see each link is identified. This is about a pound sausage, which we would use for our manicotti dish just as a garnish, really. But if you want to eat in the manner of Italians, this is also a side dish, just as the meatballs with a nice salad on the side. Now, if you come to the stove, the water is now boiling, and I'm cutting my links and putting them into the boiling water. The reason for this is that since this is pork, we want to be sure, and of course this is an old idea. I suppose now we don't need to worry about trichinosis, but at the time the sausage were put into boiling water so as to make sure that the heat went into the center of the sausage as quickly as possible. So as soon as all of this water is evaporated, you'll find also that our sausage are turning gray, beginning to cook. And as soon as the water is evaporated, the sausage will begin to brown. As the sausage begins to brown, the total time will take about 15 minutes. And your heat will always be on high. Now what I do is I turn the sausage and I see that the fat is beginning to melt. I prick the sausage in several places so as to release its fat. Like so. Turn the sausage around and do the same thing on the other side. Can you see that? That also allows the casing not to burst, because as the meat expands, many times the casing will burst because there's no place for it to go but to tear apart that way. So there's a twofold purpose for the pricking of the sausage. Now as soon as all of that water is evaporated, you'll see the sausage turning a nice golden brown. The sauce has been cooking for about 10 minutes, and you notice that they're all beautifully browned. I have lowered it during the cooking time to a low heat, but I'm now going to put it up to the high again, because at this point we're going to add 2 tablespoons of wine to steam through the meat. Can you smell it? I'm going to have that almost evaporate. At which point we will add sausage to the ragu, which, as you know, I had frozen, is now defrosted, is heating in the pan, ready to receive the sausage. Then 5 more minutes of cooking time, and the sausage will be cooked through. So you see how easy it is to make all of these dishes, meatballs, sausage, and add it to your ragu if you have your basic ragu sauce already made. You turn off this heat, add it to the ragu sauce from which I moved the meatballs. I'm now adding the sausage and just heat that through for a few minutes. Okay, the manicotti have been in the oven now, a 375 oven for 30 minutes. They are now ready. And I'm taking it out. Now you notice that I have aluminum foil on it. We don't want the manicotti to get crisp, so you will cook it with a cover of some sort, and this seems to be the most practical for me. Here we have your manicotti with the sausage, and this is the total recipe. The little platter that I had before just for demonstration purposes was not all of your crepes, but these are all of your crepes. So you have enough here for 10 people, 8 people very, very generously, as you see. There are about 15 crepes here. All right, following the same procedure that we did for the ziti that we made at the beginning of the tape, this is an 8-quart pot with 6 quarts of water boiling rapidly, to which I'm adding 1 tablespoon of salt, rather than the 2 that the manufacturer recommends. We don't want ours as salty as that. Now the secret with lasagna not sticking, you don't need oil, is that you put them in at different angles, about 3 at a time, push them down. One will go in this way, one will go in that way, make like a little star, push them down, and do the same until you have finished all of your lasagna. Don't ever put them in all at once or you will have one sticky mess. All right, there goes my buzzer. That means 8 minutes are up. I'm going to turn off the heat and not the heat. I'm going to turn off the buzzer. And I need my gloves, please. This is very hot. Be careful. Make sure that you have protection. Even if you have handles that do not get hot, when you are emptying the pot, the heat will come back toward you, so make sure that you have protection. Now, I have the colander here in the sink. And you notice I'm not pouring all of that water at once, again, so that the heat doesn't accumulate and come back to burn me. But you notice there's not one lasagna stuck in the pan. All right, shake this now. They tell you usually to put cold water so that it doesn't stick. Not necessary. What I do is take them one by one and place them either on aluminum foil, wax paper, or this acrylic. They will cool by the time you're ready to stack them. And you will not have ruined it with cold water. See, they're detached. No oil was used. There's just a way of doing it. All right, here you notice that all of the noodles have been neatly laid out. None of them are torn, and they're nice and cool now and easy to lift and for you to put your baking dish. The first thing to do is to take 1 tablespoon of butter and coat the dish with it, like so. All right, then we'll use our sauce. First, we'll put 1 layer, just a little bit of sauce, enough to coat the bottom of the pan. And if you need a little more, go ahead and add it. Okay, a little more. There. All right, we'll let that sit like that. We're now ready to prepare the ricotta filling. Now, we will need 1 pound of whole milk ricotta. Then we will add 1/2 pound of whole milk mozzarella. Get a fork and mix that. You say, well, gee, the filling is almost the same as for Manicotti. In fact, it is, except that in the Manicotti filling we had the prosciutto, if you remember, and also we have more, about double the amount of mozzarella in this filling. This is 1 cup of Romano or Parmigiano cheese. If you like the spicy, use the Romano. If you like the more bland, use the Parmigiano. This is Romano cheese. I'm not going to use that in the filling, whereas we did use it in the other filling. That is just to sprinkle on top of the lasagna. And here we add our egg. Mix. One tablespoon of parsley. Mix. A couple of turns of pepper. Mix. And again, I have not added salt, if you notice. The reason being the Romano cheese is really quite salty. If, when you taste it, it is not to your liking, then just add some salt. Now, since this is a little dry, I'm adding 2 tablespoons of milk. Now you say, how can I tell whether I need 2 tablespoons of milk or not? If you don't hear kind of a little squish sound, you hear the little squish sound now. Before that, it was rather dry. This ricotta was exceptionally dry. Usually the kind that you get at the supermarket will probably be moist enough, and you won't have to worry about that. All right, now we take our noodles, about 4 noodles, and we overlap them, and I'll show you when I'm through. We overlap them this way. Then we take our filling and we dot it here and there. About 3 to the noodle. And then spread it. This is very simple, and actually you can do it in a variety of ways. If you don't want to cube your mozzarella, you can put just the ricotta and the egg and parsley and pepper for your filling, and then slice your mozzarella over it. You can do that too. Then you take your sauce. Again, you dot it. And then spread it across the noodle. And don't put too much sauce. Just spread it this way. And you'll find that the ricotta filling will start to melt as soon as you put the warm sauce. Then you take your cheese and sprinkle it over each of the noodles. Then your second layer. 1, 2, 3, 4, about 4, and you have a nicely layered. Now you have room here for your sausage if you like, or use a smaller baking dish. Again, do the same thing. Dot your ricotta until all of your noodles are used. Now, the top layer will get no ricotta filling or mozzarella or anything. It just gets the sauce and the sprinkling of cheese. Now, I have another one that is baking and will be ready for you in a few minutes so you can see what the finished platter looks like. Ecco. Now we have all of the dishes that we prepared today with our ragu or meat sauce. The first thing, as you remember, that we prepared were the ziti al ragu, which was ziti made with meatballs. Now, there are 2 ways of serving meatballs, either as a second entree or as part of the main course. Italians usually set their meatballs in another platter and serve it with a green salad with Italian dressing. Secondly, we made our manicotti, which was the egg noodle dough, the crepes, if you remember, rolled around your ricotta filling. Here I have sliced the sausage so that it's part of one main dish. However, you could also decide that you want it as a second entree with your salad. And lastly, our lasagna. It beautifully prepared, and thank you for your time and your effort, because I'm sure that without you I wouldn't be making these tapes. And I really invite you to send in any questions. If you have any questions at all about something that has been prepared or something that you question that no one has answered, I certainly will try to answer those questions for you. Ciao, alla prossima volta. Goodbye.